A first listen to Hallowed Be Thy Name by Iron Maiden. So this is the very first Iron Maiden track I have listened to and reacted to on this channel, and I just find the name to begin with very interesting, because if a band's name is somewhat of a representation of their music in the same way Nirvana was, of course, the name was created by Kurt Cobain, who said his music and hopefully the band's impact on its listener would represent freedom to himself and to his listeners. Iron Maiden is an interesting choice for a name. You think it's perhaps going to be representing intensity, perhaps something conceptual, or the idea of being trapped, maybe looking into oneself, are all possible expectations for the music, but that is just going off the name. So as far as listening to metal music in general, I've had a lot of my sort of pre-misconceptions broken through listening to Metallica's music, which has really impressed me. It's been very well written, conceptual, with great musicianship, all of which I didn't really connect with metal music before I had listened to their music. So as a lot of people have told me, Iron Maiden is one of the best metal bands around, and they have also great writing and musicianship, have a lot of conceptual records, all of which I love. So let's see where this band takes me. Okay, here we go with the reaction.
When the bell begins to chime, reflecting on my past life, and it doesn't have much time. 'Cause at 5 o'clock they take me to the gallows pole.
Great voice.
Sands of time for me are running low.
Turn it up.
When the priest comes to read me the last rites, take a look to the bars of the last sites of a world that has gone very wrong for me. Can it be that there's some sort of error? Hard to stop the surmounting terror. Is it really the end, not some crazy dream? Somebody please tell me that I'm dreaming. It's not easy to stop from screaming. My voice escapes me when I try to speak. Tears forward, why am I crying? After all, I'm not afraid of dying. So I believe that there never is an end.
Wow. Okay, really quick. This is a very, very interesting story, man. This is a concept record, it seems like to me, of a man who is essentially being sent to his death. You know, this idea of a gallows pole. So he's sitting in his cell waiting for essentially his last couple breaths to come. You know, he's about to be read his last rites. You're talking about a priest. Really, really interesting story that's being told here, man. And what has sort of struck out to me, I think, is this idea of it being quite calm in the beginning and quite serene. You know, almost I felt as if he was dealing with the situation really well. You know, like he was in a good headspace. And then, as with the cranking up of the intensity of the music, was his lyricism. You know, it kind of mimicked his emotions of what I think perhaps would go through the mind of someone who is on death row. You know, then you had all the insecurities, and then his ideas. The coolest part of it was the ideas about spirituality or religion start coming up, which really cool line, great line. Don't I believe that there is never an end? So he's almost even saying to himself, like, I'm feeling this terrible way. He's talking about tears flowing, but why am I crying? Because he's saying that he believes in a afterlife. Don't I believe that there is never an end? He's like, you know, I'm a spiritual man. Why is it that I still feel this way? It's fantastic that the music is also mimicking his sort of rising emotions, his fear as well. Really, really cool, man. I like this. Let's back this up a little bit. Wow, how epic is this?
As the gods must be out to the culture. Somebody cries from my soul, got me with you. If there's a God, why does he let me go? As I walk my life trip before me, though the end is near, I'm not sorry. Catch my soul, it's willing to fly away. Mark my words, believe my soul lives on. Don't worry now that I have gone beyond to seek the truth.
Wow.
When you know that the time is closer, and maybe then you'll begin to understand that the near is just a strange illusion.
How cool is this record, man? Wow. Very, very epic sort of soundtrack to what would be like acceptance of death. Really, really cool concept. You have in the last couple verses here is him becoming more accepting of what is happening and the idea that this life here is transient. You know, life down here is just a strange illusion. You have lines like, mark my words, believe my soul lives on. And what's the best part of this thing is that the concept isn't lost in the instrumentation. You know, you have this lead guitar, which is fantastic, fantastic. I don't know if other people make this connection, but I played a lot of like Sega growing up, you know, as a kid, in the best way possible. That had, you know, Chrono Trigger tracks, games like that, video games like that growing up. Chrono Trigger had great music to it. It sounds like a video game soundtrack, and I mean that in the best way possible. I don't know if other people will make that connection. It just sounds so epic and like a final moment of sort of looking inwards into oneself. Really, really cool, man. Let's keep this going. Oh. Guitar. my god, listen to that groove. Absolutely epic. Absolutely epic. So much to say about that. Now, musically, I mean, I hear sprinklings of Iommi. Now, I don't know if the actual lead guitarist was actually inspired by Iommi, but I hear a lot of it in him, in the way he plays lead guitar. And that's the biggest compliment I could give a guitarist of a metal band, because Iommi is, you know, a god amongst men in terms of guitaring. So brilliant lead guitar throughout the whole thing. Fantastic drumming, which seems to be a part of metal music. Lead guitar and the drums are just knocking, man. They're just working so well together. So let's get into the story of this track. It's essentially a journey into acceptance of death and therefore spirituality by a person who is facing death imminently. Really cool. You had this sort of serene section in the beginning where he seemed to be perhaps not yet fully understanding what's happening, and then his emotions start to come out. He starts questioning what is actually going on. It seems to be a person who's also not understanding why he is actually being tried. Maybe it's been a rushed trial. He's been blamed for something that perhaps he didn't do. Can it be that there's some sort of error? I remember him saying, hard to stop the surmounting terror. So then it's his fear that starts coming into it, and he starts questioning himself about his fear, because he is perhaps a man of God. He seems to be sort of asking himself those questions. And then eventually you have him moving towards this idea that this life is transient, and that, I mean, talk about all these topics that this song is covering, man. Wow, acceptance of death, spirituality, a journey. He eventually understands that, you know, take a line like this: somebody cries from a cell, God be with you. If there's a God, why has he let me go? He is no longer in God's favor, he believes. And then eventually he gets to a point where he says, hallowed be thy name, which is essentially meaning like putting reverence upon, he's talking about God there, isn't he? A reverence, a special place, holding something up to a special place, is your name, is God's name. Wow, what a deep record. And also a really interesting idea, in the sense that I feel like a lot of people do a similar thing where maybe God or spiritual aspect of their life is not really there for a lot of it until, you know, perhaps someone like gets cancer or something like that, or like death becomes closer as you get older, and you start to turn more to God to stop feeling the way you feel, or to help you deal with the fear of death. Really interesting, man. All these sort of ideas stemming from this fantastic track. Great writing. Once again, great instrumentation. Brilliant song, man. 2 thumbs up. Another great metal track.